Hi, and welcome to Mental Health First Aid 101, a training video for the Antioch Christian Church Mental Health First Aid Ministry. In today's video, we're going to show you how to identify a mental health crisis with the prevalent signs and symptoms of mental health conditions encountered in someone's everyday life or even as a life in the church. Then we'll present the steps a first responder will need to take in order to administer mental health first aid. As we get started, it is also important to understand that within the mental health first aid ministry, the words emergency and crisis are used interchangeably. They both represent the same urgency of a mental health situation. A mental health first responder must remember their job is not to provide treatment for someone who is in crisis, to simply help the person with proper care for the situation that they're in. Mental health first aid is a triage, which means they assess what's going on and then they find a way to connect the person to a professional mental health care. The training is not on how to diagnose mental health disorders, but simply how to apply first aid to a person in need. When it comes to a mental health emergency, they can develop over time or they can occur rather suddenly. And understanding the signs and symptoms of mental health conditions is vital. Some of the most common behaviors of a person in a crisis that a first responder can look for are things such as a dramatic change in the personality, an inability to perform daily tasks, rapid mood swings, and intense agitation or even violent behavior, self-harm, suicide ideation, hyperactivity behavior, frequent nightmares, or even excessive worry or anxiety. Every person is different on how a mental health crisis may manifest itself. However, there are some symptoms that when they combine together point to a specific mental health condition that a first responder can recognize and be able to help with. In the majority of mental health crises, the emergency is triggered by a stressor that impacts the person's life either socially, physically, or emotionally. The stressor could be a loss of a loved one, a loss of a job, experiencing some kind of a trauma like a car accident, drug and alcohol use, or even leaving their mental health treatments. Some of the most common mental health illnesses that can be encountered within a person's daily life, and more especially within a church setting, are those of grief, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. So let's look at how the specific symptoms of each may appear. Grief is a mental health condition that is identified by a person feeling guilty or blaming themselves for things that have happened. Most of the time, this is associated with someone who has lost a loved one. They may also be preoccupied with that loss and express an intense emotion of sadness or even anger. A person dealing with grief may also feel fatigued, have a sleep pattern disturbances, and even change their appetite. So you might notice that they're gaining weight or losing weight. We move on to someone who is dealing with or battling depression. They may display some of the senses of despair and hopelessness. They may have a lot of energy or a loss of energy. They may have a persistent sadness that they simply can't shake. And they also have a loss of interest in doing their normal day-to-day activities. A person with depression may feel that they are worthless, coupled with some negative thoughts and feelings. And they may also have a loss of appetite and sleep as well, as their ability to focus has changed because of them. Anxiety is a mental health illness that affects people in a variety of different situations. Symptoms of an anxiety crisis show up as excessive worry and nervousness. The person fighting anxiety may be easily irritated. They may have dry mouth. They may be restless. They may be looking continuously for reassurance and a place to say it's safe. And lastly, suicide ideation shows itself through behaviors that may not always be seen because most people do not think about them, but yet someone who is suffering through suicide ideation may display behaviors of self-harm, which may not be seen, a sense of unbearable pain that is tied into their emotions. They may be excluding themselves in social settings, withdrawing from other people. They may have a change in their sleep patterns, their eating habits. They could gain weight, they could lose weight, and they can have an increase in drug and alcohol use. A person with suicide ideation may also have a loss of interest in their everyday activities and express a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. With the symptoms of mental health illnesses in mind, the next step for a first responder is to learn how to respond to a person with a mental health crisis. The National Alliance on Mental Health Illnesses provides a 5-step process for mental health first aid, simply used with the acronym ALGE. This process involves assessing if there is a risk of suicide or harm, listening non-judgmentally, giving reassurance and information, encouraging appropriate professional help, and encouraging self-help and support strategies. For the mental health first aid ministry at Antioch Christian Church, we are going to focus on just simply 3 steps. We call these 3 steps the 3 L's of mental health first aid at Antioch. The 3 L's are to look, to listen, and to link. Each step represents something that a first responder has to do. And it all begins with the simple to look, to know the symptoms of mental health illnesses that we've mentioned earlier and be able to assess if there's immediate threat to the person that they're looking at and talking with. Looking also could entail being willing to talk about mental health illnesses openly. Talking about mental health challenges and illnesses not only help take care of the stigma of mental health, but it also gives an open door for those who are suffering to be more willing to talk about what is going on, as it gives them a sense of care. In talking about mental health, there are opportunities to engage with people as they respond, which may not have happened before, simply because they are willing to talk. And the first responder may be able to find signs and symptoms that we have mentioned earlier. If there is a threat, the first responder will need to contact emergency services right away so they can get the help they need quickly. When contacting emergency services, it is important that the first responder stays calm and that they tell the dispatcher that those who are responding will need to have mental health or crisis de-escalation training. When emergency services arrive, the first responder is to continue to offer support to the individual. That continued support can look as simply as being a calming presence, being willing to hold their hand as they go through the questions from the first responders, or even praying for the person. If there is no risk or harm, then the next steps can be followed. The second step of the 3 L's is that of to listen. As the first responder engages with the person, they need to listen non-judgmentally. Because listening is not just about hearing. It is also about being willing to be engaged in what someone is saying. Maintain eye contact throughout the conversation. Nod your head in agreement so you can acknowledge the things that they're going through and they can feel that they're being listened to. During the listening stage, make sure you give reassurance to the person, acknowledging that they are not alone, that there have been others who have gone through the exact same thing that they're going through. Your presence and your willingness to listen will speak volumes to the person that is suffering with a mental health crisis as you minister to them. When the conversation starts to end and it starts to slow down, it is then time to move on to the next step. The third step of the 3 L's at Antioch Christian Church's mental health first aid is to link. In this step, the first responder will use the knowledge that they've gained from listening, and then they will recommend a professional in order to give them the help that they need. During the link stage, it is important to follow up with the person to make sure that they are going and actively seeking out the professional help that was recommended. During this step, it is also the time in which you can continuously minister to them through the ministry of presence. You can simply invite them on a walk, you can invite them to go on a hike, or even have a coffee at the local coffee shop. These activities provide a time for you to check in and to see that they are doing okay, and also to make sure that they are seeking out that professional help that they need. This is also the time to simply ask them, how can I pray for you? Once they have been able to seek the professional help, the job of the first responder is finished, and they can go on and continue on reaching and serving other people. We want to take this time now to thank you for your time and for your investment in learning to be a first responder at Antioch Christian Church. If you desire more information about mental health first aid or other resources, you can simply reach out to us at antiochpreachersdesk@gmail.com, or you can look at below in the description of the video where we'll have resources linked for websites and books, other videos, and even certification programs that you can participate in order to learn more about how to be of assistance for mental health first aid. Thank you once again, and may you continue to journey on helping others.